looks like we are getting toward the end of this time that we spend at home. So I was thinking a lot. I've been doing this kind of intensive meditation thing this week. So I've been thinking a lot about that home space, and I've been enrolling this class and doing some Zoom calls with people. And one thing that seems to come up is talking about this idea that's part of like the structure of what I do in the groups is the home space. And you have to really begin at the home space if you are going to really be able to clear out the home space, which is really the core of the work. I was thinking about this Antoine Saint-Exupéry quote today about perfection. You've achieved perfection not when there is anything to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. And I was thinking about how much that is sort of the objective of the emotional sobriety group. It's not that we're looking to add something. The skills and tools are actually all devoted to taking something away, shutting down that identity turbine, looking at its contents, opening all the presents under your Christmas tree, no matter whether you see them as adverse or something you are aversive to or something that you crave and really desire. This capacity to truly just be with what is, that has to begin at the home space. I was talking to one person on a Zoom that really wouldn't be a good fit for the group, and she was talking about, like, I don't want to meditate. I don't do any meditation. I have anxiety, and so I don't ever want to do that. And to me, that's my perspective and my parameters for the group are that if that's a label that you're taking on, like, I have anxiety, so I can't sit still for 15 minutes. To me, you have a problem. That's a significant problem. Anxiety, the perspective that I come from is that everything is energy, not new. And it's how we label that energy. When we coalesce it with a word, that's when it tends to get stuck in our system. For me, that came up a lot, even around trauma that I've experienced. Trauma, too, is energy stuck in the body. I remember something truly awful that happened to me a few years ago, and the person that witnessed it with me, I took her out to lunch. We ate Vietnamese food right after, and you would not have known that anything had happened. I tucked the energy of despair and fear and violation from that experience. I tucked that away for later because I couldn't be with it in that moment. I was not at a place yet in my practice where I could have been with that experience fully. So I tucked it away and I took her out for Vietnamese food, and you would have thought we were just two buddies hanging out having lunch. But what happens is that, once you lodge that energy in the body, that's when it turns into a hungry ghost. And it just feeds off you and feeds off you and feeds off you. And for me, that really went along with drinking. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to look at that hungry ghost. That hungry ghost keeps like being like, boo, boo. And I'm like, not today, ghost. Get back down there. Get back down. And you can't do that. Like, it's very simple. You simply cannot do that. You have to let it out. You have to pull that hungry ghost right out of you, look it in the eye, and say, I am no home for you. It's time for you to go back to being a pilgrim. And then it goes and becomes like a flying monkey or whatever. But it's no longer in you, blocking the energy that you could otherwise be devoting to service and usefulness and a sense of purpose that is actually your birthright, that's inherently yours. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, I had one person in a enrollment call to talk about, I just don't even know how to get in my home space. He's like, I don't spend much time with that. How do I even stay there? And for me, I mean, there's obviously thousands of years of historical practices in meditation and there's all kinds of ways that people get to that clear that clear embodied place. And, the body is not the end of that. You can't really, let the body leap until you fully land in the body. That might not make sense now, but more on that later. But to get completely in the body, like when was the last time you felt completely in your body? Like sometimes when I'm doing connection calls with people, it comes up when I had sex last. And yeah, that's such a powerful energy. That's why I have this thing where, like, in a lot of Buddhist traditions, they talk about the heart and the mind and the heart and the mind and the heart and the mind. You're missing one. You have to include the genitals in that. You have to, because if that circuit between your heart, your mind, and your genitals is such a weird word, but I don't want to make this for specifically men or women, because it really is so important for all the humans. If all three of those are connected, or if you're cutting the genitals off of that and you're just like up here in the heart and mind, it's like, I think it actually holds your practice back, because you're not fully dropped down. Again, we get into that thing of like, Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz wasn't given a ruby beret. She was given ruby slippers. You have to fully bring it all the way down. And believe me, this has been a practice for me for many years. So one of the ways, the way, it's not necessarily the way I use now, but to me, the easy peasy way to get back into your home space, to really be softly and fully present in your body. Allow yourself, your essential self, and your body are completely permeating each other. Unless you're in that home space, it's very hard to feel how you're receiving things that are coming from around you, or even from inside your own head, from that identity turbine that's whirring around beside your head. If you can't kind of know what's coming in, you're just going to keep reacting. And then you're not really moving forward, because those reactions are going to be coming out of old stories or habits or ways, identities that you have with yourself. I talked to one person today who was like, oh, I'm very attached to this good girl narrative. I think it's a very common one for women, wanting to show that you're a good person, wanting to be eager to please. But this is that identity turbine. That's absolutely one of the blades in the fan. And that goes, it's like, I'm good. You like me. I need you to like me. I'm very good. Let me prove it to you. And you end up proving it to people that don't require your goodness, and are a squandering of that genuine, heartfelt goodness. And you have to question, is that even still genuine, heartfelt goodness? Or is that just a performance that you do now in the role of good person? And how do you know that? How can you even really discern that unless you are absolutely grounded in your body and you can feel, is that really coming from my heart? Or is that coming from like somewhere in here? Or is it like up here? It's like, oh, I'm worried they won't like me. Let me do something good. And I think right now, as we're stepping out of our homes soon, it's more important than ever that we really can at least know what that feels like. To be just fully embodied without a big stimulus like sex. Like, we are just fully embodied, because that in itself is a powerful skill which is as important as any other. Like, it's more important than any other, frankly, because everything else is going to come out of that. So for me, the quickest way really is the box breathing. And so I do two different styles, like beginner and advanced sort of the box breathing. Now, the box breathing helps to regulate the vagus nerve, which runs all the way down. It's basically the river that's running between your brain and your gut. And it helps to notify your brain about what's going on with your internal organs. So it's like this river that is taking those messages between your gut and your brain. So that's actually, what does that run parallel to? Well, it runs parallel to your mind, heart, and your genitals. So your mind, heart, and genitals are also sort of energetic centers, right? There's one thing that I read that talks about how the electromagnetic field of your heart is actually a 3-foot torus shape, which is like a donut shape that that forms around your heart, around your whole self. So whatever the state of that is, people around you are going to be feeling it, and that's just the clear torus shape. And so when you think about how that's permeating beyond that, that's something for you to be responsible for. And I guess that's what I'm getting at too, is like if you can't be in that home space, you're not really behaving responsibly. And you could be polluting all over the place and not even really be aware of it because it's just what you've always done. It's just who you've always been. And we can't afford that now. Emotional sobriety to me is a responsibility of an ecological responsibility to a certain extent. And what I do in the group is work with people on their personal ecology, taking away things that are polluting and impeding. So the actual natural rhythms and natural weather systems, if you will, can actually interact with the greater world in a great way instead of an impeded way. Basically, it comes down to get the fuck out of your own way. And that begins at home, right? Like it does in any kind of scenario. So starting with the box breathing, you can do this like pretty much anywhere. I mean, the second one, I guess, would be a little weird to do in like an elevator or something, but you can do this pretty much anywhere. And I talked about it briefly in the previous live, but I want to really break it down today and talk about like how long would you do it? How would you know? How would you know when to stop? And to that I can only say you'll know. That vagus nerve will actually signal everything. It'll signal your parasympathetic nervous system. So your central nervous system has sympathetic nervous system, which like the mnemonic for that is like that it's like a symphony. It's stimulating and like active. And then there's the parasympathetic nervous system, which is like a parachute that floats down, down, down slowly to sort of downregulate everything. And that's where the vagus nerve comes in. And the box breathing with its longer exhale directly helps to regulate that vagus nerve. And therefore everything else, including that head, heart, genital circuit. Just like the circuit of Eros. Very important. So how I do this is in for 5, hold for 5, exhale for 7, hold for 5. So it's very helpful if you can get yourself into a really comfortable position when you're sitting. I like to sit. You can stand for this too. It really doesn't matter. But what is important is that you feel lifted. You feel a little lifted up. You're breathing deep and deep, deep, deep into your belly, and you feel lifted. One thing that I find that helps with that is if I feel like I'm dangling from a string in the top of my head, and so I make sure there's like a little space under the rib cage and in the hips, so you feel a little bit more spacious, and then you can bring in that breath. And for so, it's one thing that I did a little bit there that I caught myself with is like on the hold at the top, I kind of scrunched my shoulders up a little bit. And it's great if you could just leave those shoulders relaxed and leave everything soft and yet lifted at the same time, if that makes sense. Spacious, spacious. And now, so the second box breathing, the advanced box breathing, involves sound. So basically, it's just like the first, except the exhale is with sound and it's for a 10 count. So it's hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hold. Ah. So that sound, um, in my Zen practice, I do a lot of chanting, right? And so basically, this is sort of like a non denominational chanting of sorts. So you're just making that sound and making it as consistent as you can and as steady and bold. And you're breathing from that belly. So the belly's deep and full. So it's like, ah. And that sound, if you can tune it to where you're feeling it in head, heart, and genitals. So it should be lighting up that whole erotic circuit. So you can feel it at each of those places, like, and it could be even when you put your hand in either of those places, you'll feel that vibration. And that, like, then that'll really almost massage that vagus nerve too, and that'll bring you right down in there. That one works really quickly. And so then what's the point? Like, why go there? What's the point? Where is there a there? Why are we even bothering to do this? Well, what happens once you're solidly and softly in that home space and you stop the box breathing and just go back to regular normal breathing, you'll see the thoughts that start to come in, which are very useful. And the first part of this is just noticing what thoughts come in. And almost more importantly, to me anyway, I find this more useful, is noticing if those thoughts have a corollary in the body somewhere. Those thoughts come in, where do you clench? Is it a shoulders? It's somewhere unexpected. Like there was one time I was working with something for a while where this little muscle in here kept like jumping. Well, I was very subtle. I was like, wow, I don't know what that is. And sometimes you never end up knowing what that is. Sometimes you just observe, you notice this thing is happening, and then it works its way out. But when you get to like those trauma situations where that kind of energy is lodged in the body, that can take a long time of practice and really being able to sit in that home space very calmly as those little hungry ghosts pop up and peek out. Because they do have to be released, and they're not going to be released all in one go, because they almost require, in my experience, an amount of release time roughly equivalent to the time that you've been pushing it down. It can be a lot faster, but sometimes you don't want it to be. Sometimes that can be really challenging. Sometimes that shit can just bring you right to your knees. And that doesn't have to be the work. I think there's not always a clear choice with that. So you don't always get to choose. Sometimes things will come up and you just have to be able to be with what's actually there and meet it with compassion. It's one of those gifts under the Christmas tree in your home space. You left the tree up, you look over, there's those gifts. You don't know what's in them, so you really don't know what to open first. So you just grab one, and that's kind of how the energy will come up in your body and your home space. The thoughts and the energies will just sort of arise in whatever order they do, and you just have to kind of be with it. And sometimes the sensations will come with a color or a tone or an image, and sometimes they make sense and sometimes they don't. But this process of just staying really soft and relaxed and not clenching and being able to release these things what's the point of that? Right? Like at every stage of this, it's like, well, what's the point of that? Believe me, I've asked myself that a million times over the last 20 years. And I guess one way of putting my answer to that is you find out who you are, right? You get to see what are the actual impulses coming from your full essential embodied self, and how is that different from what's in the identity turbine, right? Because some of those impulses are going to be native to you. They are going to be essential. If you have that anxiety, if you have constant anxiety, it could very well be your whole frequency that you're oriented to is just pitched a little bit higher. And if you start bringing it down into the body on a regular basis, you'll find that it naturally grounds a bit. But it's so distracting to get the little things in there. But if you have any questions about this, I'm going to do a Q&A in a few days, and I have a couple more things I just kind of want to throw out, concepts that I want to throw out. And if you are interested in practicing with me in the emotional sobriety group, definitely send me a message. We can set up a Zoom call to talk about that. Yeah, I guess I'm just so excited about this time and the possibilities that we have going forward. So these are skills that have been really useful to me in a lifetime pursuit of joy and uncertainty. That has been my practice for many, many years, finding joy in uncertainty with varying levels of success over time. But it seems to be awfully stable over these past few years. Past two, for sure. It's a worthwhile practice. It's a worthwhile practice because it allows you to be of service. And when you're able to be of service, you become inherently more fearless. And when you become inherently more fearless, you become absolutely more who you are. And there is a great deal of joy and stability in that. Yeah, so let me know about the group, and put any questions in one of the little boxes. All right, bye. Have a wonderful evening.